Welcome to AwesomeDOT, your dedicated guide to the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem. All content is thoughtfully curated for educational and informational purposes. We ensure that our resources reflect the latest developments and insights. We prioritize your knowledge without offering financial advice or endorsing the buying, selling, or holding of tokens. The opinions and resources shared are those of the respective contributors and do not reflect the official stance of AwesomeDOT. Trust in your discretion for all financial decisions inspired by our content.
Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of the AwesomeDOT Podcast. Join us and learn about all the new and shiny tech that's getting built around Polkadot. So today we have Hristo from LimeChain and Yogesh who is going to moderate this podcast alongside me. So how are you guys today?
Doing great, thank you. Nice to be here.
Great to be here.
Yeah, sounds good. So let me introduce Hristo to give a start to this podcast.
And there, thank you for inviting me and for giving
Yeah,
us a chance to share a little bit more about our proposal and what will be the added value of it.
yeah. Risto is here from the LimeChain team and he's working on a Polkadot node testing platform, Zombienet. Risto, why don't you tell us more about it?
Yeah, it's actually we're not working on Zombienet itself, but we have based our solution based on Zombienet. So Zombienet is something else that another team is owning, and we're just consuming it. So let me provide a little bit more of context about who we are and what we do. My name is Hristo. I am part of the business development team at LimeChain. What we're doing is we're a software development company focused entirely on Web3 and blockchain related projects. One of our core missions as a company is to support the progress and the development of the DOT domain as a whole. That said, we have been quite involved in the Polkadot ecosystem for the last 3 years with multiple projects. We started initially with a proof of concept for an alternative of Substrate using assembly script. That project never reached something besides the proof of concept phase. But on top of that, for the last couple of years, we are working on other very exciting things. One of them is called Gosamble, which is an alternative of Substrate based on Golang. We expect that by the beginning of next year, we'll have a production-ready version of Gosamble that will be ready for a wide adoption. Besides that, we're implementing Fruzhin. Fruzhin is Java host. Recently, we finished the second stage of its development, and currently it can be used as a full node. Right now, we start the third stage, which purpose is to be able to use Fruzhin as a relaying node as well. Also, recently we started a new project, which is a migration project in the context of Substrate that would allow the usage of arrow code within Polkadot as well as some indexing updates. So, in a nutshell, that's what we do. As you can see, a lot of the things that we're doing are related to having alternative implementation of the Polkadot client. As you know, this is one of the big preconditions of having a resilient tech stack within the blockchain context, because having alternative implementation of the client allows much better stability and much better security for the ecosystem because you don't rely on one implementation. In that regard, Polkadot is actually in a very good state because especially with the host, there are at least a couple of alternatives besides the default party implementation based on Rust. We have the Kagome implementation based on C++, Gosamble, which is a Golang version of the host, and as I mentioned, Fruzhin. That's something that our team is working on. That is a Java-based alternative host. So it feels so good having so much options. There is one other precondition though. So those options are effectively being utilized, and it is having a reliable mechanism to ensure that all those implementations are, on one hand, compliant with the protocol specification, because the protocol specification of the host of Polkadot is something quite big and quite complex. So one thing is to ensure that everything that is being provided by those hosts is in line with that specification. Another thing, of course, is to have a functionally working bug-free product. Um, And this is the problem that we're trying to solve. What we want to do is to implement a test set. We call it a conformance test set, which idea is to, on one hand, assert that the hosts in their different variations are all acting according to the specification and that they're working in general. We started this with a research grant, which we finished earlier this year. The purpose of this grant was to research different methods and different mechanisms on how this testing can be done. And we came up with a couple of ideas. I'll briefly share those because they are relevant of the scope that we're currently diving into with our treasury proposal. So one option to test the host is with additional logging. By having this additional logging, you receive additional information about the state and what's happening within the host. So this is one of the outcomes that we analyzed, and we did some small proof of concept that this is feasible and working. Another option is by exposing additional RPC methods within the host that will allow you to execute certain testing scenarios that otherwise wouldn't be possible. Again, something that during the research we proved that works well and could be used as an approach. A third approach, which is the most scalable one because it is host agnostic, is by having a custom runtime, again, extended with additional testing functions that allow you to execute certain scenarios. The reason why this is the best and the most scalable approach is because with one custom runtime, you can execute the test in the context of all the hosts without needing any changes or any specific implementations in the context of the different hosts. So that was the third outcome that we came up with. And the fourth outcome was that Zombienet is the best test runner and the best framework for in which the test case is to be based upon, mostly due to the fact that it provides a very convenient mechanism to set up a node with different configuration options. And on top of that, there is a very good export and import state mechanism that is very, very convenient when you are setting up certain preconditions that you need in order to execute your tests. So based on this research grant, right now we want to transition this project into its first phase. And this is in essence our treasury proposal that we opened earlier this week for discussion. Hopefully in the next couple of days we are going to submit it for voting as well if everything goes to the plan. The idea of this proposal is to act as the first phase of the implementation of the conformance testing suite based on the finding from the research. And we decided to focus on certain areas, not try to solve all the possible problems because the functionalities of the hosts are quite broad. So that we decided to narrow it down a little bit and focus on three areas, which are the state tree, the host API, and scale. We established a couple of milestones for this first phase of the implementation of the tests. The first milestone is mostly focused on crafting test cases for those three functional areas that I mentioned. Those test cases will be, technically speaking, either YAML or POML files. We haven't decided on that yet. That will be describing different inputs and different outputs that are paired together. So imagine you have an input that you have a specific function call via the host API. Based on this input, you have a specific expectation for an output that you assert after that based on what scenario you're trying to execute. So milestone one will be mostly focusing on describing all those inputs and outputs based on the Polkadot specification. And it will be mostly QA describing the different scenarios that are needed so that specification can be confirmed. Milestone number two, its focus is on implementing a custom runtime. As I mentioned, one of the outcomes of our research was that this approach is the most scalable and the most host agnostic one. So in order for us to have a testing mechanism for the host API, we decided to go for it. An idea here is to implement a special host conformance runtime that is exposing some external functions for most of the host APIs that after that we use for testing. Also, as part of this milestone, which outcome will be this custom runtime, will be also configuration for Zombienet that would allow setting up this runtime to be run in the context of the variety of the different host implementations that I mentioned earlier. And the third milestone is the integration with Zombienet, because the outcome of the first milestone will be test fixtures somehow. Second milestone will be custom runtime, giving you the ability to execute certain functions for testing purposes. What is putting them all together is milestone number 3, which is Zombienet integration. Essentially, Zombienet is the test runner that we plan to use. So the fixtures using Zombienet test runner and via the custom runtime will put the host in different conditions and verify that it behaves as expected. Um, in the context of Zombienet, that would require some special execution scripts, which is most of the heavy lifting that would need to be done in this third milestone. And as with every project, we have a fourth milestone, which is most documenting and basically making sure that everything is explained quite well, and so that the project is also open for external contributions from other people that are interested to extend this set of tests. Because our project will only set up the ground for having this test set. There will be a lot of opportunity in the future for instance other host implementators to jump in and describe some tests, so we can have a solid mechanism to ensure that all the hosts are stable and resilient. Some further ideas about things that we might do next if we implement this first phase of the project would be adding some new tests, mostly related to consensus, expanding the host API functions with other areas outside of tree. Also, there are some areas for improvement on the setup between the test fixtures and Zombienet that could be made a little bit more automatic. Now it is something semi-automatic, so to say. So yeah, this is mostly it about our project and the scope. Special thanks to Camille from Kagome. He was so kind to give us a very good feedback on our initial scope and help us to improve it quite a lot. And yeah, so this is it mostly from me. I would like to encourage the community, if you have any ideas on how we can improve our proposal and make it better, we'll be happy to discuss and accommodate those.
Okay. So I'm Yogesh. Hi, Hristo.
Yes.
I think really technical project, to be honest, and I feel we need to probably also the audience that we have is not that technical essentially, so we'll try to sort of dumb down a couple of things so that everyone gets
Yes.
it overall.
Yes.
But yeah, I wanted to talk about Zombienet overall. So like right now, as I can see, Fruzhin is another LimeChain product that you've done the Java node implementation, right? So did the idea for Zombienet come from building Fruzhin, or like how did you sort of come to building Zombienet like as a test? So
Yeah, just to reiterate again, Zombienet is not something that we are developing.
hmm.
Zombienet is something that we use as a test runner. So
Oh, okay.
we are using Zombienet, which is a testing framework specifically crafted for testing runtimes and hosts in the context of Polkadot.
Okay.
By building on top of it, we built some special purpose scenario, which goal is to ensure the conformance of the host implementations.
Got it. Okay. So then, uh, why build it? I mean, did it come across when you were building something else or all the other node implementations? Or like, why do you think we should need a test runner like this?
Yeah, it could be that we're somehow inspired by the fact that our team is building the host, one of the major host implementation itself. Right now, due to the lack of this automatic reliable mechanism, we need to do a lot of additional work in terms of testing in order to ensure that our host implementation is compliant. If we have had something like this conformance testing suite that we're proposing now, by just running it, we would make sure that our host is behaving exactly the same way as expected and it is in sync with how the other hosts are behaving as well.
Got it. So what's your goal to sort of make sure that this conformance tests run with the default Rust node for Polkadot that's already available? Like, would it be compliant with that, and then you'll go ahead and sort of implement it for other uh, uh, sort of other implementation node implementations?
Yes and no, depending on the
Okay.
feature that we're testing. If
Okay.
we're testing with the custom runtime, once we implement the tests, they can be run on all the hosts, including the rest from Polkadot.
Okay.
So that we receive out of the box. That's why we call it host agnostic.
Okay.
For other set of features, for instance, scale, that wouldn't work, and that's not expected to work because there are some variations on how the host should behave.
Hmm.
But again, by having some custom logic into the different host implementations, we can also achieve that. But that would be a next step for the future stages of the project.
Got it. Got it. And also with all the new tech that's getting built in Polkadot with the Polkadot 2.0 stuff and agile code time and everything that's coming into and I feel the there would be a lot of things that would come onto the node itself. So how do you plan on sort of making sure that or do you plan on just implementing a certain set of things right now and then move on to the newer tech that's coming? Like, what's your plan for all the new Polkadot 2.0?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question because the specification itself is something that is progressing, it's something that is changing.
Yeah.
Our tests are going to target specific version of specification, meaning, let's say the specification changes, some major upgrades are being implemented to existing functions or some new functions are added. What we can do, we can release a new version of the conformance test that is applying those changes. And actually, this can be used after that by all the host implementators in order for them to ensure that they are, let's say they want to target new major version of the protocol, whatever, they can use the tests to ensure that they are compliant with the requirements of this major version.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. So, so then let's talk a bit about developer experience then, because I think this is probably a very developer specific proposal.
Mhm.
So where do we are, like, if for someone who wants to actually use this, like how much time do you think it will take for you to get there? And how would this be packaged? Like, would this be a CLI itself, or we get Zombienet and then run this? Or would this be some sort of SDK or a package that you can install? Like, how are you thinking this integration would look like?
Mhm. Okay, actually, the duration of the project we have estimated it is around 10 weeks, something like this.
Okay.
We see it as being delivered as a binary that can be easily introduced in any sort of pipeline or CI/CD process. It's not an SDK. It will be something like I'm not entirely sure about the technical details here, but it will be something like a library that you can easily reuse within your CI/CD pipeline.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
Maybe
Okay.
maybe we can also implement something like a pipeline that other implementers can reuse, but I need to double check that with the team whether this is planned or we'll do it in the next iteration. But we see it as something that can be very easily integrated into the development process in general.
Got it. Okay. Okay. I mean, great then.
Mhm.
So one last question: how do you see this getting used by sort of other parachains? Like, because they would have a sort of a different set of node like changes, different set of palettes in the node and everything.
Yeah.
So can anyone sort of integrate, or are you focusing on Polkadot for now and then extend?
We are not testing the parachain implementation here. We're testing
Okay.
the underlying host implementation. Actually, before we submitted our proposal, we get the feedback from all the host implementators,
Okay.
and they gave us some feedback that we addressed. That's why I mentioned the special thanks to Camille because he gave us
Okay.
some fantastic feedback. So, just to clarify here, the target users
Hmm.
of those tests are the host implementators, not the parachains.
Got it.
That's we are going to provide them a very smooth approach how to use the tests, and we're going to work together with them to extend them because, as I mentioned, for certain areas we need to team up with the other host implementators in order to make certain features being testable,
Makes sense.
technically speaking, so to say.
Okay, awesome, awesome. That is great info. I think these are all the questions
Mhm.
I had.
So thank you, Risto, for such a great explanation from your side, and thanks, Yogesh, for such an interactive question from Risto. It was a real learning experience, and I hope our audience will have some takeaways from the insightful discussion. We will see you in the next one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Risto.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of AwesomeDOT. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode in the comments section or at website. The content presented on AwesomeDOT is not financial or investment advice and should not be viewed as a recommendation to support any specific project. The views expressed are the personal opinions of the podcast guest and moderator and may not necessarily be shared by AwesomeDOT. We do not endorse or guarantee the accuracy of the information provided. Want to join us as a speaker? Visit our website at awesome-dot.com to learn more. Remember to star the GitHub repo, awesome-dot. Also, you can always find us on Spotify for more great content. Have a great day. See you in the next one. Thank you.